Hola, ¿qué tal amigos del Cuarto de Cine? Pues aquí estamos con el director Peter Greenaway para hacer algunas preguntas durante el Festival Expresión en Corto. Mr. Peter Greenaway, I would like to ask you about, can we track a relationship between your last opera that you presented around 10 years ago in this place? Can we track a relationship of meaning about 100 objects to represent the world and the Tulse Luper Project?
Well, if you have a title, which indeed is 100 objects to represent the world, it indicates an encyclopedia, a dictionary, a try to sum up everything indeed in the world which can contained in a fairly modest list. And I suppose the Tulse Luper Suitcases is doing exactly the same thing, although of course it's far more ambitious. The theatrical performance we had here certainly had projection, it certainly had 100 objects, and it also had, I suppose, a documentary tradition, but it was utilizing conventional theater actors. Here, I suppose, our scope is maybe, I don't know, you'd have to probably work it out by some mathematical means, but at least it must be 1,000 times bigger. And it involves the whole history of the 20th century, most specifically surrounding the element uranium, which is responsible for the atomic bomb, which is responsible for the East versus West, Khrushchev versus Kennedy phenomenon, which I lived through as a young man. We're talking the 1960s. But I think also that its scope is much more geographically large because there are incidents and stories and plots and ideas and events in the film which happen in, I don't know, Colorado, in Manchuria, in Gobi Desert, in Alaska, in Australia, in the depths of the China Sea. So it has a very, very big geographical and historical range.
Okay, now talking a little bit about yesterday's conference, you mentioned about four tyrannies that have in some ways framed the whole cinema narrative. Can we talk about a fifth one in our digital world? Or do you envision that?
Well, a lot of critics say, yes, Mr. Greenaway, but you do realize there is a fifth tyranny, and it is Peter Greenaway.
Oh.
I think, sort of director's subjectivity is probably something that would be a positive effect rather than a negative one. I mean, we need, or it seems as though we need our Stravinsky's, Picasso's, Corbusiers as a sort of benchmark to measure ourselves in the same way we would need our Lars von Trier's and our Antonionis and our David Lynch's. That's the way that we would measure maybe our success or failure or attitudes towards the medium by those people who we feel have done something rather valuable. It's, again, a very subjective analysis. I think when I say to talk about the tyrannies of the frame, text, the actor, and the camera, we're talking about 114 years of continuity. My favorite date to keep quoting is the 31st of September 1983, and in a sense, a lot of our language has changed since then. Godard suggested that cinema is the truth 24 frames a second. We don't need 24 frames a second anymore because we're working now in an electronic medium. So I think, if I could make a comparison, if we play the game, the goalposts have now moved.
Okay, and finally, how do you envision the future of cinema?
Again, a huge, big subject matter. I think if we look forward to the next 20 years, cinema will divide itself into three. There'll always be probably an archival cinema. There'll be a cinematheque whereby you could go and look at the classics of the past. There will probably be a great post-technological cinema that you'd associate with the names of Disney, for example. But I think in some ways that could be very, very boring because it'll be family entertainment, so you can't talk about sex and you can't talk about death, and really what else is there to talk about? And then there's the third area, which I think is going strong already. It's presently operating on DVDs, but I think within, 4 or 5 years, rather like the music business, you'll be able to take all the films you ever want directly off the World Wide Web.
Bueno amigos del Cuarto de Cine, aquí acabamos de entrevistar a Peter Greenaway, pues nos vemos en la siguiente emisión. Buenas noches.